What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sound On. We are on episode 22. We have a packed show for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about the new results of our exclusive Pulse of Seattle poll that's coming out this morning ahead of next month's general election. It's less than 3 weeks away. We're going to talk about toll rates possibly rising to $18 on some Washington highways. And where do people urinate in Seattle? An interesting question we're posing on Sound On this morning. Here we go.
Hey.
Hi.
Very excited again for another live episode of Sound On.
How do we think about these live episodes? What do we think about them?
They're cool. They're different. It's like doing live TV, but obviously for a social audience.
Yes, it's a little bit more pressure, but we like pressure, don't we?
For sure.
Yes.
As Steve mentioned, we do have a packed show today, but I do want to mention our episode from last week. It was our first ever live episode of Sound On, first full episode of Sound On. And that was a conversation about the ongoing conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas. We got a lot of comments on our KOMO News Facebook page relating to that conversation. In case you missed it, we were joined by a KOMO News employee, Gabe Katzman. He lived in Israel for several years, and I encourage you all to just watch this if you missed it. This was a deep conversation into what's happening, and Gabe was able to provide some perspective from someone who lived there. I want to share some of those comments we got. Tim Smith just said, wanted to give some perspective. Not going to be the bigger person. Anyone who sides with torturers and butchers of children deserves to be treated with the same level of inhumanity. No child deserves to be butchered. And we got another comment. Someone responded to him saying, I support the Palestinians. So, this is it's a hot topic, but it's also a sensitive one.
It is.
A lot of people are commenting still. And if you have thoughts, we encourage you to share them as well after you watch the episode.
And this war has really escalated over the past couple of days.
Yeah.
Obviously, President Biden is in Israel this morning. He was meeting with his Israeli leaders to sort of talk about the situation there, especially coming hours after that deadly hospital attack that we saw in Gaza yesterday that, according to officials, left several hundred people dead. But if you have some time to look at that conversation that we had with Gabe last week, it is certainly worth your time as this war continues to rage on
YouTube and Facebook.
That's right. All right, let's talk about the Pulse of Seattle poll. We are less than 3 weeks away until Election Day, the general election. There's a lot on the ballot. We're talking about 7 Seattle City Council races that are up for a vote at the beginning of November. And what this poll is it really dives into what Seattle voters are thinking ahead of Election Day. In addition to those council races, we're also gauging the mayor's job performance, Mayor Bruce Hale, and how he's doing so far. So this is an exclusive poll that we did with Strategies 360. And I want to bring in a very special guest that we have this morning, Ron Dotzauer. You know him, you love him, you enjoy the cowboy hat. Good morning, Ron. How are you, buddy?
Hi,
Good
Ron.
morning, folks. How y'all doing?
It's good to see you. We normally see you in a very structured environment on the newscast, but this is kind of fun where it's a little bit more loose, kind of we can ask you some fun questions about your role with Strategies 360. We know that you're the founder and CEO. You're obviously our KOMO political analyst. So we see you quite a bit around election time, but it is an honor to have you and have you kind of talk about, the results of this poll that we did with you within the past couple of weeks. It's fascinating.
Yep. Well, you're very kind, and welcome to the ranch, Sterling Stables. So I'm hanging out here this morning before I change into my my new garb for some time with you all later this afternoon to talk a little bit about the poll. This poll is a little bit different than we've done before, Steve, in the sense that we moved away from the sort of head-to-head matchups in the council race. We didn't ask any of those related questions. What we wanted to do was do a little deeper dive on some policy stuff and some kind of attitudinal mood sort of thing. So it was a different approach. I really, my team and I really enjoyed doing this. And I know that the folks at KOMO have got a lot of interest in what we've been doing and how our approach was so much different. And we sort of, in some ways, we depoliticized it for a political poll. And we found some fascinating data and some stuff that almost looks like contradictions to sort of start with. For example, well, I'm sorry. Looks like you
No,
were
that's
go.
okay. I was going to say it's going to be fascinating to sort of dig into the results, but I know whenever you pop up on camera, one of the first things that people think about is what's on your head.
I'm pulling up a comment right now. Michael's watching and he said, "Nice hat."
Well,
And you said
thank
you're at your
Michael.
ranch.
Yeah, I have a small quarter horse ranch out north of Seattle. And excuse me for what I'm about to say. I said, I like people. I don't like neighbors.
Ah,
And so I love people. I deal with them all day long. But it's so nice to have this 10 plus acres sitting out here and the privacy of it all, and it's so quiet, and it's almost a little magic for me because my life is pretty hectic. And I grew up I didn't grow up. I was born on a ranch in South Dakota and moved out here at a very, very young age. I think I was 6 or 7 years old. And, about, I don't know, about 30 years ago now, I started accumulating quarter horses, first in Ellensburg. And then I needed a place to put them because I was tired of the drive. Anyway, so that comes from, I've been around animals all my life. I've been around ranches, and my family used to send me back to the Dakotas every summer to work on the ranches and the farms. And I realized that that's not what I wanted to do for a living. I like the fun part of it, like, the riding the horses and all the rest of it, but the bucking of the hay and the long hours and the milking of the cows that kicked me between the eyes once and all that stuff.
Like milking
the
the
dirty work.
cows.
Yeah.
It sounds like now you get the best of both worlds, though, Ron. You've got a peaceful living situation over there, and you still get to educate people on, what's going on in the city.
We got to
Well,
get you up there,
Tara, I have a little mini petting zoo out here. I have 4 miniature goats. I have 2 miniature ponies that I got inherited because a friend of mine called me up and said, "Listen, they're about to be done away with. I'll take 2 if you'll take 2." And all of a sudden, I ended up with 2 more of these mini horses and had to build a new barn for them, plus my quarter horses. But my family and my friends and the S360 family, they love coming out here and hanging out and just kind of relaxing because it's a chill place to be.
We have a comment from Megan Westerby, who's watching the show right now, saying, "Got to rep that family history." So she's chiming in. Family history is very important. It's very important. We got to get Tyrah up there. I know that you were nice enough to have a bunch of us KOMO folks up at the property a couple months ago, and it's a great piece of property. Just so much to do up there. I know that you invite some kids to sort of take part with the petting zoo, which is a really cool thing.
I'd love to see the petting zoo. I'm not much of a farm girl, but I'll try it out.
Well, what's kind of fun is when my staff comes out here, here's what usually happens. I have an amphitheater and a pitching and putting green and sports court and a covered spa and sauna. Plus, I also have a covered fire pavilion. And so when the family shows up, what happens, they go up and they sit in the fire pavilion if it's chilly, drink my wine while I take care of the kids and babysit them, okay? They get in my 4-wheelers and we run around up into the woods. We go do the petting thing, blah, blah, blah. And they're sitting there with a fireplace, all chill, hanging out. And by the time they leave, I'm exhausted. But I don't mind it. It's kind of I enjoy doing that, and that's part of the reason I created this, because sometimes the hecticity, I like to call it, of city living. It's nice for them to come out and walk amongst the trees and see the animals and just see another little way of life, and the kids don't want to leave.
Yeah, I can easily understand why after seeing that up close. And the putting green, you have a trail there too, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Just all sorts of neat stuff.
Yeah, it's a fun place. And so, Tyrah, you're going to have to make it out here one of these times.
I will be there.
I wonder if he's going to let you borrow one of his hats.
Well, I have plenty of them. That's for doggone sure.
I was like, I need to wear one. Do you also wear cowboy boots? We usually only see you from the waist up.
Oh yeah, I have. I'm never without them, as Steve knows. Although we spent a lot of time together during COVID, but yeah, I have plenty of cowboy boots and plenty of cowboy hats, and the store that I frequent a lot for all my Western gear, they just love me to pieces. Okay, And there's a guy up there that's a connoisseur of cowboy hats. I don't know if I'm allowed to sort of put in a pitch about where I get my Western wear, but
Sure,
shout him out. Why
for it.
not? So we can get one too.
Well, it's Beth West on Highway 9. Now, it is kind of a show to go up there, and I brought other friends of mine up there and outfitted them with cowboy hats or cowboy boots. And the guy that owns that place, his name is Lance. He is a connoisseur aficionado of cowboy hats. And he will sit there and lecture you for 45 minutes on how you touch a hat, how you set a hat down, how you shape it, and he's almost not nice about it. And he's a good guy, but he is so, in terms of, I had a young friend up there a few weeks ago, and he sat down and kind of gave us a hat lecture on the history of cowboy hats and how they're shaped and where they come from. And it was, it's a show when Lance gets his hands around a person that hasn't worn a cowboy hat before. Okay.
All right. So these are serious business.
This is, it is serious business. And he's a character, love him to pieces, but like I said, he is a show in and of himself. And he's a real cowboy too. He does a lot of some roping and reining and some other things, but anyway.
I love that. I want to go experience that.
Same.
I don't have a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, nothing.
Well,
Megan says we got to get Lance on the show.
We do.
Lance, you would enjoy the heck out of Lance. I swear to you.
He sounds like a character.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And he's almost intimidating about the hats. Like if you touch it, move it wrong, it's like, no, you don't do that. This is the way you do this, and you just.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a wrong way
either.
to touch a hat.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, there's a wrong way to touch a hat. Wrong way, you got to take it here from the front up when you pick it up, he has a whole routine.
Just amazing.
Yeah.
Ron, we know that you've obviously been involved in politics for a really long time. I know in our conversations you've talked about being a county auditor early on in your career.
Yep.
I've obviously been a part of some high-profile political campaigns going back to Cantwell and Gordon, and have done a number of work on other campaigns over the years, and have obviously been involved with Strategies 360 for a long time.
Yeah.
When you sort of gear up for an election day, and maybe this has changed from over the years, but do you have any sort of like election day rituals or superstitions or anything of that nature?
That's a good question. Because, I 2 years out of college, I was the youngest elected official in the state. The other piece of me is I don't know if you know this, but I'm a Vietnam vet. And I spent almost a year up on the DMZ. And so I decided when I was over there that I didn't like what was going on. So I was going to come back and I was going to change the world. I, of course, failed miserably. But part of it I manifested by pursuing elective office and helping people run for elective office. I had the pleasure of electing 2 United States senators and a governor in the state of Washington. And I was lucky enough to be successful. But to answer your question more specifically, Steve, there's one thing I would always do on election day. Okay. Always in my own cases or when I was running these races. So I would stand in front of a mirror and not on an ego vain kind of thing. I stand in front of the mirror and I look at the mirror and I'd ask myself a question in the mirror. Did I do everything I could possibly do to put either myself or my candidates in a position to be successful to win today?
Ooh, I like that.
And if I could walk away and the answer to the mirror was just me in the mirror, and if I answer the question with yes, then I could accept whatever the results were. And each time I was able, I think, to get to yes, and so and it seemed to work. But that was something I did every on election day.
That's interesting, because we were actually going to ask you if you had any election day rituals or even election day superstitions. I know a lot of people have those.
Yeah, that's kind of a superstition and a ritual. It became so much a tradition. I did 3 statewide campaigns in 4 years back in my youth, and it's the thing about campaigns. It really is a young person's game, because it is so. There were times I wished I was back in Vietnam getting shot at because it was so grueling.
Wow.
Okay, because it's 7 days a week, 15 to 18 hours a day, and it is in some ways it's a little bit like a business. But the thing about this business, there's a 1 day sale. Okay, and that puts a lot of pressure on you to get it right, and you don't always get it right. I used to talk to people about defining a campaign, and I'd say 50% of what you do in a campaign is unnecessary. The problem is determining which 50%. Okay,
Yeah.
because there's so many things that go on every single day, and then I'd always try to when I put the campaign plans together, I would do election day back. Okay, to wherever I was at, when I ran Booth Gardner's first race for governor. I sat down for a month and outlined a campaign plan. And we were in a difficult primary, and plus we had an incumbent governor to beat. And so I sat for 30 days, basically like Noah's Ark, 30 days and 30 nights inside this room, hatching a campaign plan that we ultimately were successful with. Because in a campaign, I don't mean to run a campaign school here. If you don't do something like that, it's the push and pull and the tug of the candidates, the campaign managers. What you have to do is put your blinders on, almost like a horse race. When the horses, sometimes they put the blinders. You have to put your blinders on because you're going to get all these distractions that go on in a campaign. You're going to get distractions from the candidate. You're going to get them from the candidate's family. You're going to get them from friends and family and blah, blah, blah. You just have to stay focused and keep pushing forward. I like hiring people. And again, this isn't about Democrat or Republican or independent. I like hiring people into my firm that have a campaign background because they're a little bit more battle tested than if somebody just has it's great to have a PR, branding, advertising, marketing degree. And those are great degrees to have. But there's no substitute, in my opinion, for a battle-tested person who's worked in a campaign. They're used to crisis situation, they're used to deadlines, and they rise to the occasion just a skosh better than folks that don't have that experience. So I brought a lot of people in, but most of them, they have their backgrounds in PR, branding, marketing, advertising, digital, blah, 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 but they've had some experience in campaigns. See what happens? Ask me one question, and I start going all over the damn place, Steve. I
was going to say it's a different beast to have that experience as opposed to somebody who has just a PR or comms background. I'm sort of thinking about all that weeks of work that you're putting in, 7 days a week, and then you're that person standing in front of the mirror asking yourself that really important question.
Yes,
and that kind of cuts to the core of what you just did all these weeks prior. It's just it's incredible.
Yeah, there is probably no more intensity than running a high profile Senate or governor campaign. But you know what? It's interesting. The fundamentals of a campaign are the same whether you're running for Seattle City Council, the state legislature, or governor or U.S. senator, because I've seen it all. But the fundamentals, the things you have to do to be successful, are fundamentally the same. They're just the magnitude of them are increased exponentially, and the budgets are increased, to almost obscene numbers these days.
Yeah, no kidding.
Lots of great background questions there, and just insight. I learned so much just now. I want to get into the exclusive Pulse of Seattle poll, though, the results, the first batch coming out this week.
Yes.
And Ron, I'm curious about the background on the people who are voting. How many people do you all survey? And how do you make sure it's an equal representation?
Are you there?
Hi.
We're here.
There you go.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Is it, you have the demographics, you have the profile already of the total audience, and your research, your polling, your draw has to represent that. Okay. And so over the years, you've gotten the sample size can be represented within a margin of error. And that's what people miss a lot of the times. It's not exact. Okay. And sometimes I think that the there's almost, we get a little, talk about public opinion pollution when you in presidential cycles, every 5 minutes, you see another poll coming out and blah, blah, blah. But the methodology is really the critical part. And your question is a really valid one, to make sure that you have that representation of the sex and the demographic profile and the mix of the folks, which we do very carefully look at to make sure if we're askew on it, we'll make some more contacts to make sure that we get that representation. So in this case, I think our plus or minus was about 4%, 4.5% in our research. And again, polls are not, an exact science. Okay. But they do measure a point in time when what people are thinking. I'm a big advocate of tracking. I like tracking polls so I can see trend lines, which is kind of what we've done with our KOMO experience now, which is kind of really cool. This is the third year in a row we've done a poll. We've asked a lot of similar questions. So now I can go back and look and say, okay, well, what was Mayor Harrell's approval rating last year versus what it is this year? Is there some diminution in it? So that gives a context that I think and a little more richness to the results that we now have for KOMO, as opposed to not having that backdrop. So we have a lot of the same questions. In fact, if you were to look at our instrument, and I believe it's online, I think at KOMO and also at Strategies 360, you'll see we actually in parentheses put the differences. There's been a drop of 10 points on this issue from a year ago or from 2 years ago. So you can see that. And that's kind of, to me, that's almost as telling as what that exact number is from this poll. So it's really kind of cool in that sense. We're able to do that. I hope that answers your question a little bit there.
Ron, I want to ask you about we're kind of releasing these in phases, the results of these polls.
Yes.
And today I know we're sort of focusing on the frustrations with persistent issues not being addressed across the city.
Yep.
And when you're talking about taking a look at the mayor, the city council, I know we asked a question about the Seattle Police Department too. What were some of the main takeaways that you got from voters when it comes to their opinions on those three, if you will?
Sure. And in fact, I have I'm going to make sure I don't misrepresent these numbers. So if you'll indulge me,
Of course.
I have my little cheat sheet right here in front of me. Okay.
Perfect.
So in terms of whether we tested the mayor, we tested the city council, we tested in this second phase, right, that we're going to be talking about this evening. So we're all getting a little sneak preview here right now. Mm-hmm. And so we saw some things that we've seen a fair amount of movement in the last year, and frankly, not in a good direction. Okay. Let me give you some examples of that. The Seattle Police Department's favorability, right? This in this polling system, they had a favorable 33%, unfavorable of 64%. Last year, they were at 45-43, right? So you can see a big change. I mean, that's a drop of almost 32 points. That's an increase of unfavorability. So the Seattle Police Department has some real challenges in front of it right now. Their credibility is not very good. But even worse than that is the Seattle City Council. And their unfavorabilities has risen substantially. So last year in 2022, they had a favorability of 28% with 57% unfavorable. Today is 20 and 70% unfavorable. Now that is that in polling, when you get those kinds of numbers, when you get over 55 or 60% of unfavorables, you got problems, okay? But when you started getting into 70 and 80% of some of these numbers, you got big problems, okay?
Yeah.
But again, I'm looking at this to see how it has moved in the last 12 months. and almost all of these questions that you've just asked, Steve, to report on, have all moved in a in a negative direction. The mayor, the council, the police chief. There's plenty of optimism about living in Seattle. They don't like the direction of where things are going. The homeless issue has gotten even more challenging. I'm more than happy to share a few more of these numbers with you if you like, but the trend is not good, okay, for these folks.
And we know, Ron, that there's a number of Seattle City Council members that are not seeking re-election. So what, based on what you're seeing with this change compared to last year, what does that tell you about what's going to happen in November? That, we're going to see a policy shift when it comes to the council makeup. And obviously, I'm assuming that public safety might be top of mind when voters are filling out their ballots over the next couple of weeks too.
It is the single number one issue amongst the voters in the city of Seattle. If I were running a campaign, boy, I would be hammering on that issue. Again, you can't lay out too many issues, right? But this is that issue that transcends all the demographic profiles. And so what we have, excuse me, is we have 7 council districts.
Yep.
This is sort of an interesting election cycle because we only have 3 incumbents running for re-election. So we automatically know we're going to have 4 new council members. Now, who are they? Where are they coming from? And these issues that we have laid out here are the issues that the voters care the most about. The thing that's interesting, it's not even close, Steve, on crime, homelessness, and housing. The numbers in those areas are like, and here's how the question is phrased. Aspect where Seattle is worse compared to other major U.S. cities, okay? Crime and drug use, better 7%, worse 66%. The availability and affordability of housing, 5% better, 82% worse.
Wow.
Homelessness, favorability or better, 2%. Worse, 82%. These numbers, these are not close calls. Okay. It's unusual to get these kinds of strength of these numbers that you see here that you posted in terms of basically they believe that Seattle's worse than every other city in America in these areas. Okay. And it's pretty. And again, if you took all 3 of these, if I were a city council candidate, I would wrap myself around those issues because those are the issues that the voters care the most about. And it just jumps right off the page, if you will, folks.
I know that we don't always want to focus on the negative. Is there anything positive that people look at? I know we have a graphic for this too, but are there things that are better about living here than maybe some other major American cities?
And Steve, that's a good question because there's a little bit of a dichotomy here. People love living in Seattle. Well, why do they love living in Seattle? Well, they love the nature. They love the access to water and the outdoors and the recreational opportunities off the chart, right? The parks, access. They love civic events. You know what else they love? They love our food.
Okay. Love our food.
55%.
They love our food. So and they love the public transportation. They love our sports. People love living in Seattle. They really do. They just don't like what's going on in Seattle. But they'll be the first people to defend living in Seattle because of their quality of life that they really enjoy about being here. But they sure would like to see some of these issues fixed for them. And these are pretty draconian numbers that you're putting up here, folks. So
we just got a comment from Oceana 23. She says, we do have great parks. And you mentioned every major city has its big problems, homelessness, crime, but there's a lot of optimism about living here.
There certainly is. I mean, people love, when I first looked at these numbers, I said, well, they love Seattle, but they don't like the direction of Seattle. Okay. And so, that's the challenge for our elected officials, for the mayor and for the council members and other public officials that are dealing with these issues. And the public is public's getting fatigued in the sense that they just don't feel like enough change is happening. And that's why we saw where the mayor himself took a little bit of a hit on his favorable, unfavorable numbers as well. And in fact, I said about a year ago that I felt like the mayor and all had maybe a year and a half to kind of really start attacking this and figuring out how they could start solving some of these issues. And you can see that his numbers have dropped a little bit. And his unfavorables have come up to 35%. And so it's, and it's directly related, in my opinion, to the feeling that not enough is being done to deal with the crime on the streets in Seattle and homelessness and housing.
We at least know the pride aspect is very high. And I know that you asked, one of the focuses yesterday was more on the feeling of Seattle, which you touched on a little bit too, in terms of, what's your overall opinion of the city itself, but then also some other issues involved with that too.
Yes.
When it comes to light rail, I know that a lot of people are anxious to get the expansions done. The Seattle Kraken obviously just starting their season, and they're not off to a hot start so far.
But
new
don't forget
NBA
pickleball.
team. Don't forget pickleball. Yes, the official
state sport.
Yeah. But give us the breakdown of some of these key issues too.
Yeah. I mean, again, 84% on anything is an amazing number. So the support for light rail expansion in Seattle is off the charts. Okay. and so that would be something, if I were an elected official, I think I would pay a lot of attention to. But they just like other things about Seattle. We talked about access to parks and recreation and food and other things. But they also like, again, the light rail. They like their sports, right? They like, the Kraken really came into town and did such a great job with the community. And again, they're off to a bumpy start this year, but they still feel extraordinarily great about the Kraken. They're also excited about the prospects of getting an NBA team back. And I can say on a personal level, as a former Sonic season ticket holder, I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'd very much like to get my seats back and start cheering on the Sonics again.
It's been way too long.
It's been a long 15 years now.
15 years, yeah.
We just got a comment from Michael. He says Seattle deserves an NBA team like stats.
Thank you, Michael. We agree.
Michael, I'm completely on board. Can I tell you a story about, and this may be too much, when I met the new owner of the Sonics?
No.
I was invited to
tell us.
So Bennett was the guy's name.
Clay?
Hey, Bennett, I was invited to, I think you might enjoy this. I was invited to a breakfast at the WAC. There was about 20 or 25 of us season ticket holders. And I think part of it is because he just acquired the Sonics. And part of his objective was to convince some of us that he was going to stay. Okay. They all brought us breakfast and blah, blah. And he seemed to single me out a little bit because I had the cowboy hat and the cowboy boots on, and he was from Oklahoma. So he thought I was a kindred spirit of his. Little did he know. But, and so I listened to him carefully and so forth. And then, because the Sonics were still going to be here for another year, right? This was at least a year at minimum. And so after listening to him for breakfast, I walked back to my office and I told my finance people, and they said, look, cancel my tickets for this coming year. He's out of here. Okay. He is out of here, and I'm not going to give him a dime of my money.
Wow.
So I canceled my tickets, and I didn't go the last year's protest because I was not going to let my money go to Oklahoma and the Sonics at the same time. So yeah, I canceled. I walked right back that day and I canceled the tickets.
Not a good impression.
No, didn't work so well. I don't know what the others did, but I know what I did because I could tell.
You're like, no, not me.
Just had that
he
feeling.
was going through the motions. I didn't believe him that he was going to stay. He just was going through the motions and doing what he said he told Schultz he would do.
Yeah.
But there was no, the believability just wasn't there, folks.
And that bitter taste in our mouths is still here all these years later, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to bring him back.
Well, this poll definitely does provide a lot for voters. I think it provides a lot of insight, and it gives them a chance to share how they feel. So, my question to you is, what should voters look for in a poll to avoid getting misinformed, and even any tips for them ahead of election season and really getting their voices heard?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it's always, it comes up. And you know, Seattleites are pretty, I mean, they're highly educated, and Seattleites tend to they really do a deeper dive into what the candidates are all about. And I'm not to say that in other places they don't make informed decisions, because at many levels I believe that to be the case. But Seattleites do their homework, okay? And so, and there's so many ways to get that homework done. Going to the candidates forum, watching a interview on KOMO, as they interview your city council candidates, listen to what they say, and if there's alignment on those issues. And then I think there's one fundamental questions that voters ask themselves almost subconsciously. And I've had this theory for years. I have no idea if I'm right on it, but I believe that voters in some way, when they're looking at a candidate, they ask this themselves, maybe not directly. They say, look, does he or she care about people like me, however I define me? Okay. Does he or she care about people like me, however I define me? And each person has their own definition at some level who me is, right? And they want to see that individual can relate to them, And also, at the end of the day, the other factor, besides the policy and the overwroughtness of campaigns sometimes, is there just plain old fashioned likability factor? Is this somebody I'd like to sit down with and have a glass of wine or a glass of beer or whatever, or maybe just a glass of water, but you would sit down and enjoy chatting with them. Okay. Is she that kind of person? You would feel comfortable. Would you invite them into your home? Would you feel comfortable sitting down there with them? And so that's under what I call the umbrella of the likability factor, which is sometimes hard to exactly get your arms around, but you almost know it when you see it with some of these candidates, and because they warm up to people more easily. Okay. And they'll even sometimes give them pass if they disagree on a policy matter, if they like them. Right. They just will. She's a really great person. I really like her. She's somebody that, wow, I wish she were my daughter or whatever, and if they come to that conclusion, they're probably that's where that vote's going to go.
That likability can go a really long way.
I hope the candidates are listening to this episode of Sound On, because you're providing some valuable advice for them as well ahead of the elections.
Well, I don't do campaigns anymore. I get a kick out of that. Back when I was doing campaigns, nobody thought I knew what I was doing, and they may have been right. Now that I don't do campaigns, they think I know that I'm doing, and who knows? They may be wrong on that one. I don't know, but it's go ahead.
Do you still get requests to help out with them these days?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I get lots of them. We'll do some school stuff and some other things, and we do some candidate work in some of my other states. I have 23 offices in 15 states, and we're the largest agency on the West Coast by footprint. And some of the other states might get engaged in campaigns. I don't do it here in Washington State anymore. One, because I just don't have the time. B, I'm too old for that stuff. And C, because I'm doing stuff with KOMO a lot, I can't get directly engaged in campaigns if I'm going to be talking about the campaigns. And one of the reasons that I do this, and I think Steve and I talked about this, the reason I do this is because I feel a responsibility to help the public understand what's going on, and to kind of pull back the blinds, the covers, or however you want to characterize it. So because of my experience of these campaigns, to let the voters in Washington State to see and maybe share with them what people are really, not just what they're saying, but what they're doing and how the campaign's behaving, and how they're trying to influence you, and in some respects even try to manipulate you a little bit.
Right.
So, and I take that responsibility very seriously. And so I've tried. That's sort of my way of giving back to the world of politics, is to help people better understand what the heck's happening to them during leading up to an election day.
And so much happens. And obviously every election is important, and particularly those local races that a lot of people are voting on. I know I got my voters pamphlet in the mail yesterday.
Steve, you're prepared.
Ballots are starting to arrive, or should arrive by October 23rd, according to King County. It's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out, particularly those Seattle City Council races. I know that tomorrow we have some more results from this poll that are coming out tomorrow, and then Friday, looking at the report card for the mayor. So a report card for Mayor Bruce Harrell, and then also talking about another important issue that a lot of people are talking about is downtown revitalization and where people want to see that going.
Yep. And remember, this isn't just Seattle. I know your audience,
right,
because this is the election cycle where all the municipal races are up, for mayors and council members. And there's very hotly contested mayor's race in Spokane, and some other places in the States. So there's some ballot propositions, there's some issues dealing with taxes and other questions that I would encourage your listeners to get their homework done and take a look wherever they live, and get that information, because people don't realize how important. People think, well, this is off election cycle, and they go, oh, that's a yawner, blah, blah. But these folks are making some pretty significant decisions about our quality of our life and direction we're going, and we all need to pay attention. These folks probably have more impact in some ways on a day-to-day basis than the president of the United States does. Okay.
Yeah.
And so paying attention to that, I think, is extraordinarily important.
You hear that all the time. Those local races will have more of an impact probably on your daily life than, the presidential elections, for example, that get a lot more attention than some of these other local elections that are just as critically important.
Pay attention and do your homework.
As a former county auditor and a county elections official, getting the public to participate, engage with the election process. It just matters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It just matters a ton. And I sometimes I get a little disappointed about some of our turnout numbers. And I know, Steve, you've heard me on this jihad before, so here I go. I hate the idea that we have primaries in August in Washington State.
Yes.
Because just for the very reason that people love living here, the nature and the outdoor parks, where do you think they are in August?
At said parks. They're not worried about elections.
Yes. Yes. But,
well, it's a good reminder that, you gotta, when you get that ballot in the mail, it's important to do your homework, fill it out, turn it in, and make sure it gets turned in on time. Because I think the more important, the more votes that we have that give kind of a greater consensus of how the population feels, the better overall. So it's a good reminder to get those done.
You bet it is.
Ron, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's like I said, it's always fun when we can have a little bit more of a deeper conversation with you than the 3 or 4 minutes you're allowed on TV because of TV time. But it's fascinating insight to sort of look at the results of this poll. Obviously, we've seen a couple days so far, and we'll have more results tomorrow and Friday. And
it was great to hear more about your background.
Well, I've enjoyed the conversation. Those are good questions. You listen, I'm only as good as the questions, and you all did a great job of sort of teeing me up. And I may have went a little windy at times with my answers, but this allows me to get a little deeper dive. So I apologize.
That's right.
Oh, and look at you got a call. They're calling you. Busy man.
I thought that was shut off. I'm sorry. But I'd love to do this again. I like doing this because it's so free flowing, and hopefully it's informative, and the three of us have given some people an opportunity to sort of think about this in even a more substantial way.
Agreed. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ron.
My pleasure, folks. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks, buddy.
I'll see you around the studio, okay?
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
See you on the ranch.
All right.
Great.
Fill out those ballots.
Yes. Let's get that voter turnout up.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Get it up.
All right, Steve.
Yep.
Another big issue right now happening around the Puget Sound region. This new news about tolls. I almost said polls again. I'm stuck on polls.
Polls and
Tolls.
tolls.
Do you take any toll roads around town?
I avoid them.
You do I-90
Unless
instead
the
of
only
520?
one that I will take is 99. Yeah, to get through downtown without going to the surface streets. But I avoid 67, 405. I'll take I-90 instead of 520 just so I don't have to pay the toll on 520. I'm one of those people.
You're one of those people.
I am.
I'd rather go the shortcut and pay the toll, but now I have a bunch of good to go bills. They're just stacking up.
You got to pay those.
I know. I'll figure it out.
Got to get those paid.
We're bringing this up right now because there's a proposal to raise toll rates to up to $18 by early next year. $18.
That's a lot.
Get that. So the Washington State Transportation Commission, they're talking about several toll increase proposals. This would affect express lanes on all those corridors Steve mentioned, I-405, State Route 167. The spot that I think of most frequently is the stretch between Alderwood and Bellevue using southbound 405. That's probably the area that gets the toughest during the morning drive. And right now, at its peak time, the express toll rates are probably around $10.
You saw that this morning, right?
Oh, yeah. They cost $10 at 7:30 a.m. That's peak morning commute time. So $18, if that happens, I mean, that's going to change a lot of people's mind. They may be doing what you do, Steve, taking the longer route.
Yeah. I mean, think about what you could pay or what you could spend your money on, that extra $8. Well, extra $18 really overall. If you didn't have to think about doing that, like several lattes in the morning, or I don't know, what can you buy for $18 these days?
Anything. Yeah, I could. Yeah, the first thing I think of is lunch. Lattes. But I do want to show you all the comments about this because a lot of people have a lot to say, as we already talked about. So this morning, I asked a question on X, aka Twitter. I still call it Twitter.
I do too.
I basically just said toll rates could go up to $18 for trips on I-405 as soon as December. How do you feel about the potential increase? 10,000 views on this tweet. 15 comments. Someone says, I think it's criminal, to be honest. 6 upvotes. Another reason to find a remote job. Less driving. Someone else said, Artsy Claw, I'm assuming they don't live here. I feel sorry for all those having to pay extravagant prices just to live and work. Because that is an extravagant price.
No kidding.
And a lot of people blaming the government, local politics. You get what you vote for.
Yep. We tend to hear that a lot with issues like this and crime and that sort of thing too. But I think a decision is going to be made by December or January, I think, on whether that's actually going to happen by this commission, the State Transportation Commission. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Definitely.
I can't imagine paying $10 a day.
It definitely is crazy. I'm seeing Cal's comments. That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, $10 for a toll is a lot, but the people on I-405 have to get to work and they choose to do it.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, you have to get there.
That's kind of an only option. Yeah, so leave us a comment too. You see our social media handles there on the bottom. If you have a comment about the tolls, about the election, leave us a comment. And I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to have a lot of opinions about our next topic today. And I want to premise this with, so I was looking just online yesterday, just trying to find some, interesting things that people were talking about. And there was this article from the Seattle Times that really got my attention. And I want to share it with you here.
I feel like there's a lot of anticipation right now.
There should be.
I'm just taking a scroll through the internet.
All right.
This is what I found.
Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Are you ready for this question?
Okay.
Where do people pee in Seattle?
Aside from your own house?
Yes, we're not talking about your house, your place of work. We're talking about when you're out and about in public and the need strikes you, whether it's number one, number two. In this instance, we're talking about number one. So they got, I think, almost 1,000 responses to this question that they were asking their readers, painting a picture of a city that apparently has some very limited toilet options. So essentially what people said when they were responding to this article is some possibilities. Alleys, you pee in an alley, behind bushes. Some people carry bottles, wear diapers. It's strange.
I'm sorry.
They hoard door codes so that you can get into businesses that require a door code. I think sometimes of Starbucks
Like Starbucks,
stores.
they have door codes.
You tell lies like, oh, I need to do blah, 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 blah. And then you get in and you end up using their restroom. There's apparently, this article mentions a mobile app called Flush, appropriately named, that maps retail restrooms. And I didn't know this either, that Seattle recently launched online dashboard for park restrooms. So if you're looking for a restroom in a park, there's apparently an online dashboard for the city of Seattle. They also said Pike Place Market was relatively easy to find a place to do your business. Library restrooms, I think you just have to have, like a free library card, that sort of thing. And I wanted to show you this list that we came up with too. I think this switches over automatically. Nope, I'm gonna have to share it again. So we were trying to figure out, where does the US sort of rank in places around the world when it comes to public toilet access? Turns out not very high. Paris.
Wow.
The most public toilets per capita in the world, followed by Sydney, Zurich, Switzerland, Taipei, Copenhagen. You'll notice on this list here,
where's the
no US cities. So it seems to be a
Interesting.
national problem.
So this lack of public restrooms is something people are upset about. We just got a comment from Oceana23. Says, tell you what, an unlocked porta potty can be a gift from the gods or just Starbucks. That's what I usually do. I try to find a Starbucks or even a grocery store like a QFC or a Safeway. Those places will usually let you use the restroom without buying something.
Do you always feel obligated when you go into one of those places to buy something though?
No.
Like a $5 scone or
No.
See, I do. I feel
You
bad.
do?
I don't know why, but I do. I feel like I need to get a drink or something.
If it's something like, okay, so Starbucks is really busy. There's always a
Yeah.
line in there, or grocery stores. I just run in, run out.
Easy breezy.
Yeah. But that's interesting. I wonder why doesn't Seattle or any major US city have more of an abundance of public restrooms?
I know we had, what were those things called? This was years ago. They had portable toilets. They tried this experiment and it failed miserably. I forget what those were called. It's not coming to my brain, but I think Portland has recently tried the same type of concept that Seattle had years ago, where they were just these, it wasn't a porta potty, but it was like a metal structure, and they were around for a while and it just didn't work here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Oceana. I love this commenter. Yes, always pay for something.
Oh, see?
So I feel bad now.
Oh.
Well, Night Toking says, heck, you can leave a load on the sidewalk. Don't do that. Let's leave. We just talked about how beautiful Seattle is.
Yeah.
How nice our parks are.
We don't want
wanna
that.
leave that on the sidewalk.
Oceana says self-cleaning portable toilets cost about $75,000. So that's costly.
So
we're not
it's
talking about porta potties, but self-cleaning portable
Okay.
toilets. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's a lot.
It's an interesting topic. I'm glad a lot of people are
sounding off.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Sounding off.
Oh, what a great live show, Steve.
We have covered a plethora of things today.
This
Politics.
is probably our longest too.
It is definitely our longest. We're approaching an hour.
I do want to mention that it's October, in case you didn't notice.
Yes.
We're in mid-October now. The month is just flying by.
Can't believe it.
And it's almost Halloween. We have a lot of fun stuff planned on Sound On for Halloween. And we still want to see your costumes or hear about your costume ideas. Maybe you all in the comments want to share what you're thinking about being. But the main thing we want to ask is for you all to send us your costumes, pictures of your costumes. And we want to share them on Sound On. The show before Halloween, we're going to pick our favorite costume.
But we need your help, obviously.
We need your help.
You need to show us what you're working on.
We need to
Whether you're getting those pieces together, if you have the finished product done already, we want to see it. So how do we share those?
Our website.
KOMOnews.com/chime-in.
It's in the comments. Yes. Send your costume pics to Chime In.
Send them to us, and we want to show those pictures. You don't even have to be dressed up in them. It could just be, the costume laying on the bed ready to go for your Halloween party. Whatever you have planned. Do you have any plans for Halloween yet?
Not yet, but I hope they include you, Steve.
Oh, you're the best. I hope they include you too.
Love it. And as always, if you have an idea of what you want us to be talking about here on Sound On, a topic idea. Maybe you have an event you want to share with us, a Halloween event. Let us know, and we'll talk about it on the show.
Yeah, maybe like a scary thing involving ghosts or something.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
It sounds fun.
Yes.
We didn't make plans.
This was a fun time. Thanks
was.
everybody for watching and commenting.
And sticking with us for nearly an hour on a Wednesday morning.
Episode 22 in the books.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.